Hello everyone, it's story time and today's story is called Dogger. It's a great story and it's by Shirley Hughes and she's a brilliant author. I'm trying to find some of her other books. Very good. Once there was a soft brown toy called Dogger. One of his ears pointed upwards and the other flopped over. His fur was worn in places because he was quite old. He belonged to Dave. There's Dave. You see him. Little boy. Dave was very, very fond of Dogger. He took him everywhere. Sometimes he gave him rides in the trolley. Sometimes he pulled him along on a lead made of string, like a real dog. And when it was cold, he wrapped him in a bit of blanket. Now and again, Dave's mum said Dogger was getting a bit dirty, so she showed Dave how to wash him in a bowl of soapy water. There he is. And then they hung him up by his tail on the washing line to dry. Dave's little brother Joe liked hard toys because he liked putting them in his mouth and biting on them because he was getting his teeth. That's what toddlers do. Dave's big sister Bella, she had 7 teddies, 7, that she took to bed with her every single night, and she had to sleep right up against the wall to stop herself from falling out. But Dave only liked Dogger. Now, one afternoon, Dave and Mum set out to collect Bella from school. Mum took Joe in the pushchair and Dave took Dogger. You see him, he's just there. You see him there. There he is. He's showing, poking Dogger through the railings of the school, saying, look what's through there. Next to the school gate, where the mums waited, was a playing field. Some men with ladders were putting up coloured flags. Mum said there was going to be a summer fair to get money to buy things for the school. Dave pushed Dogger up against the railings to show him what was going on. Just then, all of the children started to come out of school, and then an ice cream van came from around the corner playing a tune. Bella ran up with her satchel flying. Mum, she said, Mum, can we have an ice cream? Mum gave her the money for 2 cones. Joe didn't have a whole cone up to himself because he was a bit too dribbly. On the way home, Dave walked beside the pushchair, giving Joe licks off of his ice cream. Joe kicked his feet about and demanded more in-between licks. At tea time, Dave was a bit quiet. And at bath time, he was even quieter. And at bedtime, he said, I want Dogger. But Dogger was nowhere to be found. Mum looked under the bed. She looked behind the cupboard. She even looked in the cupboard under the stairs. Dave watched anxiously through the banisters and Joe watched through the bars of his cot. Would Dogger be found? Bella joined in to look for Dogger. She turned out all the toys in her box in case he was there. But he wasn't. When Dad came home, he looked for Dogger too. He searched in the shed, down the garden path with a torch, but Dogger was quite lost. Dave was really sad when he went to bed. Bella very kindly lent him one of her teddies to go to sleep with, but it wasn't the same thing as Dogger. Dave kept waking up in the night and really missing him. Poor Dave. Well, the next day was Saturday and they all went to the school summer fair. Look how exciting that is. Look, all sorts of things all around. Lots of stalls and places where you could go and buy things or games that you could play. What an exciting field. Oh, wonder what they did. Oh, there was a fancy dress parade as well. Look, they're all in amazing costumes. Oh, amazing. There were sports too. There was an egg and spoon race. You see at the top. There was a 3-legged race. And then at the bottom, look, there was the dad's race. Look at all the dads. They look out of breath, don't they? Bella was very good at the races. She won the 3-legged race with her best friend Barbara. Wouldn't you like to go in for a race, Dave? They said, but Dave didn't feel like racing. He was just missing Dogger far too much. Poor thing. Then another really exciting thing happened to Bella. She won first prize in the raffle. Can you see? And look at the prizes. A great big teddy bear with a big blue bow. Oh my goodness. The teddy was almost as big as Dave. Huh. Dave didn't like that teddy at all. And at the moment, he didn't like Bella very much either because she just kept winning things. He went off on his own to look at the stalls. One lady had a toy stall full of like knitted ducks and cars and baby dolls in bonnets. And there, at the very back of the stall, behind lots of other toys, was Dogger. Look! Oh my goodness. He was wearing a ticket saying 5p. No, there were lots of other people around the stall. Dave tried to explain to the lady that it was his Dogger who had got lost and somehow had been put on the stall by mistake, but she wasn't listening. She was busy. He looked in his pocket and he only had 3p. He didn't have enough money. He ran to find Mum and Dad to ask them to buy Dogger back at once. Dave went everywhere, but he couldn't find Mum or Dad. He thought he was going to cry. And then at last he found Bella by the cakes. And when she heard about Dogger, she and Dave ran back to the toy store as fast as they could. Oh, let's see what happens next. Oh, but something terrible had happened. Dogger had just been bought by a little girl. Look, she's got Dogger. Ah! She was already walking off with him. Dave began to cry. Bella ran after her and tried to explain that Dogger really belonged to Dave and could they please buy him back. But the little girl said, "No, it's mine." She said she'd bought Dogger with her own money and she wanted him, and she held on to him really tightly. Dave cried and cried, and then the little girl started crying too. And then out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Bella's big yellow teddy. She stopped crying and put her hand out to stroke the big, beautiful blue silk bow. And then Bella did something very kind. "Would you swap this teddy for my brother's dog?" she asked. Right away, the little girl stopped crying and began to smile. She held out Dogger to Dave and then took the big teddy instead. And after saying thank you, she went off with him in her arms. And Dave smiled too. He hugged Dogger and then he hugged Bella around the waist really, really tight. "Thank you, Bella," he said. Wasn't that kind? That night, when they were in bed, well, not quite. Looks like my children in bed, messing about. That night, Dave had Dogger in bed beside him. Look, there he is. He's all happy now. Bella was practising somersaults. That sounds like Molly Joyce. "Will you miss that big teddy?" Dave asked her. "No," said Bella. "I didn't like him much, really. He was too big and his eyes were a bit staring. Anyway, if I had another teddy in my bed, there wouldn't be room for me, would there?" Which actually was perfectly true. And this is a nice story. This is both the children in bed, fast asleep, really happy with their toys. And there's Dave, his dogger. Such a lovely story. Now I have got my teddy that I have had since I was 1 year old. Thousands of years ago. It's a very old bear. There we are. This is Teddy. She's just called Teddy. Sometimes I'd call it Big Ted, but it was just called Teddy. And as you can see, actually, it looks more like, more I look at it, it looks more like a duck with a beak. But over the years, all the fur has been worn away. So it's got no fur at the top. It's got, you can see where the yellow fur was. It was nice and furry and fluffy at one point. And because it was so bald, I thought it was cold. So I'd remember putting this little knitted suit on it to keep it warm. I've still got it. And it sits in my bedroom. It sort of sits a bit like that because it's a bit floppy now. But I can remember taking this teddy bear everywhere with me, and it was always on my bed and always came to bed with me. And I can remember when I was upset, or if I was sad about something, or I was cross and grumpy with my sister, I used to grab hold of my teddy bear and give it a big squeeze really tight. So this teddy bear has seen a lot and heard a lot. I wonder, have you got a special teddy bear or doggy or rabbit or little sort of creature that you take to bed with you? Do you sleep with it? Does it stay in your bed with you always? It'd be nice to see some little pictures of those. If you want, you can send them to me on the email. But for now, I'm going to say goodbye. Have a lovely weekend, and I will catch up with you next week. Okay? Bye bye.